Sheikh Hassan Youssef, the Green Prince. Please. Mosab, are you with us? Mosab, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are. Here we are. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Mosab. As I said, we are here in the Media Center that's affiliated with the National Public Diplomacy Directorate with the Prime Minister's Office of the State of Israel. And we welcome you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. I said that we have a long-time friendship that goes way back, and I'm happy that you gave us your time to join us, and you can start. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you for having me. Such a difficult time, and we are dealing with an ugly war. And apparently, Israel is not
Mosab,
the only...
we don't hear you. Mosab, we don't hear you. 1 second.
Okay.
Now you hear. Okay. You hear you well. Okay, you can start over.
Good?
Thank you. Yeah, we're good.
Such an ugly war that we are going through, where the forces of darkness, where evil is trying to take over, endangering the lives of infants, children, gambling with children's blood to achieve and gain political agendas. And the world is in chaos and is in confusion. And we cannot discern truth from falsehood. While it is very clear, it's as clear as the sun in a blue sky. After watching the Hamas massacre about a week ago at the United Nations, it was the first time I realized that there is no turning back, and we cannot compromise this time with Hamas. I always knew about their brutality since my childhood, and I fought against them since I was very little, way before I met any Israeli, way before I knew that Zionism existed. Me as a child, as a Palestinian child who was born in that culture, I began fighting Hamas at a very young age. And the more they tried to contain me, the more I resisted, and here I am. And there is a huge gap between us, the distance of galaxies, for those who ask the motives behind this. Because the child within saw that they were a danger. And as they developed, all I saw from them, brutality, killing, torture, abuse of power, especially against children, and especially against the defenseless civilians. Hamas did not only target Israelis, Hamas also targeted Palestinians. I firsthand experienced Hamas brutality in prison back in 1996, where Hamas killed and tortured dozens of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons. Hamas has no limit to how far they can go. But October 7, that was very different. That proved that Hamas reached the peak of their evil. And if we allow them to continue like this, we could be facing the end of humanity. If we don't eradicate them, if we validate them, if we give them power, legitimacy, we are in real trouble. This is why I'm speaking. This is not a political propaganda. I don't represent governments. I only represent myself. And I speak on my personal experience for all those who are listening. What happened on October 7, documented by Hamas themselves, was not only a terrorist attack. It was not only the use of violence. It was not a stereotype terrorist attack that we witnessed from Al-Qaeda and other Islamists around the globe. What Hamas committed on October 7 was genocide by all standards. They moved from door to door, annihilating everything in their way. They killed every form of life in their way, whether if it was a dog, infant, woman, children. They ethnically cleansed close to 20 communities based on their race and ethnicity and religion. And this is what defines genocide. While Israel is the victim of such a crime, and when we talk about genocide, this is the ultimate crime. There is no crime above genocide. And we are witnessing this in the 21st century, where some savages think that they have the authority to wipe out human communities, to kill everything in their way. And some of us still argue whether Israel has the right to fight for itself. This is not only Israeli fight. This is also my fight. This is the fight of every free person in the world. Anyone who believes in justice. We are not going to allow this to happen. Whatever it takes. We have to eradicate Hamas. And if we don't, humanity will pay a very big price. Israel tried since the beginning of the war, while under the shock and still under the shock of such a brutal attack, to target Hamas and avoid civilians. But Hamas used Palestinians as human shields. Their first crime was genocide. Their second crime was taking human shields, gambling with children's blood, hiding under schools, hospitals, and one of the most populated areas on earth. Then it did not stop there. They took hostages as a bargaining chip to release mass murderers in Israeli prisons. 3 crimes Hamas committed, ultimate crimes. They cannot be forgiven. They cannot be forgotten. And Hamas cannot get away with their crimes. If we allow them to get away with their crime, we have failed. Our civilization will collapse. This is how serious is this. And I don't understand why the world is so blind, why the world is in denial. This is not Israel-Palestine conflict. It's not even Israel-Arab conflict. Yes, Israel is fighting for its existence, but now we are fighting for the existence of humanity against savages who have no limit. They have no limit to how far they can go. They want to dominate the globe. They lied when they said that they were a resistant national organization. They lied. Their first lie. Because they are not. They are a religious group waging a holy war, not only against Israel, but against the entire world. If we don't accept this fact based on their statements and based on their charter, this means that we are in denial. And instead of giving support to Israel, the necessary support, whatever they need in this brutal fight. We are condemning Israel, and we are accusing Israel of committing the genocide, while they are the only victim of a genocide. There is a big difference between what happened in the communities on October 7th and what happened to the civilians in Gaza. What happened on October 7th, the victims of the savages' attack are genocide victims. The victims in Gaza, that includes children, they are only war victims because of being used as human shields by their own governing authority, and that is Hamas. Their blood is on the hands of Hamas and Hamas only. We cannot compare both. The victims of a genocide on one hand and just war victims on the other side. And it's not measured by how many died on this side and how many died on the other side. It's why the victims of October 7th died. Why and how? So we need to set the record straight. When we are dealing with a genocide, there shouldn't be any limit to whatever it takes. We have to stop this threat, because if we don't stop Hamas savages today, they will do it again. And next time, it is not going to be only against Israel, because we will encourage Hamas model, and there will be dozens, hundreds of groups like Hamas that try to sabotage democracies and ethnically cleanse humanity. This is why democracy should be united, not divided. We have European leaders coming in the midst of the war instead of giving hand to democracy that is hurt, that is bleeding in a brutal fight against savages. And what we do, we start proposing stupid ideas, such as a Palestinian state. We are not in the middle of a peace process now. We are in the middle of existential war. After war, we can talk about peace and solutions. But as long as we are dealing with savages like this, it's not time to talk about peace. It's not time to talk about negotiations. Everybody is begging for ceasefire. Ceasefire and let Hamas get away with their crime. To cease fire now and allow them gain power and be able to rebuild their military again. They have a taste of blood, and they will just get more aggressive. They have tasted children's blood, and that ignited in them monster force to dominate. This is not the first war with Hamas. This is the fourth with Hamas and the fifth in Gaza. And every time the world ceased fire, when the world allowed Hamas to get away with their crime, what happened in the next war? Follow the wars, and you will see that every time they just became more aggressive and more deadly. Why? Because democracy should never negotiate with terrorists and giving them legitimacy. This is the reality that we are dealing with. And just look at Hamas. In the past few days, they got what they wanted, a truce, and they immediately announced victory. This is what they want. They want legitimacy, and they want to condemn Israel. They want to show that violence works. And we have to do everything within our ability, within our power, to prove them wrong, that violence doesn't work, and they cannot achieve their goals by the means of violence. If we fail to deliver this to every terrorist group and to every savage, no matter where they are, this means that we will have to face a very ugly reality ahead of us. So with this said, there is no escape from eradicating Hamas. And this war, in this war, there is no compromission. In the past, Israel had to differentiate between political wing and military wing. Now, there is no differentiation. There is no compromission. Israel has to eradicate everything that breathes Hamas. They have hostages in Gaza. Israel has mass murderers in its prisons. And this is the head of the snake. This is the reason why Hamas kidnapped hundreds of civilians, because they want to free those mass murderers. And Israel cannot afford releasing those monsters and putting them back on the streets. Sinwar, the top leader of Hamas in Gaza today, was released a few years ago by Israel to return one of its soldiers. And that was, I don't want to say if it was a mistake or not, but look what happened when you release a mass murderer like Sinwar and put him back on the streets. He's the architect of the attacks on October 7th. Terrorists, savages like this must be punished, not rewarded. Instead of Sinwar being in prison today, spending life sentence, we gave him power and we made him the ruler of Gaza. This is why we are dealing with this problem now. And the world is coming to beg for a ceasefire and prisoner exchange. What are they talking about? We cannot, even if Israel allow the release of those prisoners, I oppose it. I am against it. I will not allow it to happen. To release somebody like Ibrahim Hamid, it took us 8 years to capture him in a small city of Ramallah. 8 years, day and night, chasing him. He killed dozens of people. More than 100 people were killed by this monster. And he's on the top of list, Hamas list, to be released. How can we accept this? There is no release for mass murderers. With that said, Israel should take extreme measures now. This is a war against savages. We cannot compromise and we cannot bend under the global pressure, no matter what. Israel must do whatever it takes, and that includes retrial of those monsters. The death penalty must be applied this time. There is no way around it. I am not saying that Israel to execute the prisoners now and today, but at least we need a fair retrial. When a human being kill 100 innocent civilians, he deserves to die. The death penalty is the real justice. An eye for an eye. Ancient law, not the United Nations laws and not the fake human rights written nonsense. Even in Islam, the killer gets killed. We are not talking about murderers who killed one or two. We're talking about murderers who killed hundreds of people, and they are enjoying all type of privileges in Israeli prisons. So with that said, retrial, death penalty, and it would be the card in Israel's hand to bring the hostages back. Any harm that happens to the hostages, Israel must execute top Hamas leaders with no exceptions. There are hundreds of them in the Israeli hands. This is the only language Hamas can understand. And when I say top Hamas leaders, that includes Sheikh Hassan Youssef, no exception. He cannot just incite for violence, sending people to die gambling with children's blood for his ideology and for his political aspirations while people dying, then why don't he die first? All Hamas leaders must die for gambling with children's blood. So with this said, no compromission in truth, even if it was a matter of father and son, even if it was a matter of brothers. In truth, there is no confusion. In truth, there is no compromission. He brought this upon himself. They brought this upon themselves. Then we have the situation in Qatar. Israel cannot consider Qatar as a fair mediator from this point on. Enough of this bullshit. Qatar gave Hamas cover, political cover, and still do give Hamas political cover. They gave them base, they gave them money, they gave them everything they need to get to the point where they slaughtered many thousands of innocent civilians. So as long as Qatar give Hamas a base, they must be treated as an enemy state. In fact, Israel must ask Qatar to expel Hamas leaders immediately within a time frame. And if they don't, Israel should consider all methods, possibilities of eradicating Hamas on the Qatari soil. We should not compromise. If you want to eradicate Hamas, we cannot bend to this corrupt world because they don't care for the future of the children. And I'm not saying only the Israeli children, but also all children in the Middle East. We cannot afford having Hamas around, gambling with the global security, with the regional security. So with that said, this is, I cannot be more or clearer than this. This is where I stand. And we are few hours from the end of this ceasefire. I expect firm and solid response from Israel that is going to show might, is going to show justice. We cannot compromise this. The next few days we have to hit, the next few days, few weeks, few months, or whatever it takes. We have to concentrate fire on Hamas head. We have to destroy them wherever they are. In Qatar, in Turkey, in Beirut, even in Tehran, wherever they go. We cannot compromise this. End of this. End of this bending and bowing to the devil. It is not going to help the world security. We have to get the job done. We have to get the job done. Thank you for listening. And I hope I'm not just going too much into this. Otherwise, you know, the world is not listening. No one is listening. No one is listening. Time to listen. We cannot reason with people who don't believe in dialogue. It's the end of the story. We are dealing with savages. Savages. For those who did not see the atrocities of October 7th, go back, look, and see what happened.
Well, thank you very much, Mosab. It was fascinating to hear you. Strong words, very strong words were said, especially calling for the execution of your own father. It's something we don't hear that very often, and it's something that we never heard before. It's really something that we need to listen. There are a few questions from the audience here in the media center. And again, I want to call anyone who's watching us on Zoom. They're able to ask questions that you will be asked to answer in the chat box. And we will read them out and have you try to answer them. Is it okay that we will start questions from the audience, Mosab? Sure. Okay. So the first question that we had is from Joanne. She's asking if you see any way that Hamas will surrender and go back on a straight path? As somebody who grew up in the Hamas area, in the neighborhood, if you think that these people can really straighten their path and go to a straight way.
Hamas only understand the language of the sword. They understand only the language of the gun. They don't understand dialogue. They had 20 years to drop their ideology of annihilating a race, a nation. And they didn't, they failed. They failed, they imprisoned an entire society. And they built a momentum to only express their violence. I wish that they could believe in dialogue and be able to just reason and see and have to choose between the future of children, the future of the generation, and their ideology. But they praise their ideology more. So there is no chance now. It's too late. It's too late to talk about negotiating and trying to compromise with Hamas. They understand now. Now it's only the language of the gun. Take it from me. And this is not just bluffing, because there is no way around it, whether the world understand or not.
There's a follow-up question, Mosab, on the same issue that Chris is asking from here in the audience in the media center in Tel Aviv. Chris is asking is as a child that grew up with the Hamas, did you see any sign that they would go this far from back then? Did you hear any sounds that they want to go this far as they did on October 7th?
You know, of course, the just the child basic instinct of this group growing up there, it did not like them. And this is why they did everything within their ability. You know, my childhood there was not an easy ride in that society because of their rigidness and how close-minded they were, you know. Mm-hmm. And are you still there?
Yeah, we're here. We're listening.
So practically, this is what I saw from childhood. I saw it in the mosque. I saw it in the school. I saw it everywhere. And there is no need to go through the personal stuff, what I had to witness and see from savages. But when I was part of that culture, it was very hard to go against the entire society. And gradually, I just came to realize year after year that the enemy was within. And I got fed up with blaming Israel because the enemy is within. And this is what we are witnessing today in Gaza. These are the questions that I asked myself 25 years ago. What would happen if Hamas takes over? What would they do to our people? So whether if I saw it clearly as a child, what really matters is what I see now. Even prior to October 7, I thought I knew Hamas. But after seeing their development and how far they went in their brutality and their attack on October 7th, there is no way around it. This is why I'm just outrageous on this situation, especially when I see countries giving up on Israel, condemning Israel, instead of condemning those savages. Their true nature is very clear. We know them through their actions. The children don't know. They cannot see things for what they are. But how about us, who have responsibility towards the world, and we see savages killing and raping and annihilating? It's we cannot be silent. We cannot be silent.
There's another question, Mosab, from the audience here regarding the release of the prisoners. You maybe know the individuals or the families that of those prisoners with blood on their hands that have been released. The question is, if you think these people learned a lesson, and could they go for a good way from there after they have been released due to this swap?
Yes, like Sinwar, he learned the big lesson, how to get away with his crime. For example, you can take that one. Someone who's supposed to be in prison today, and he sits deciding the fate of millions of people in the region. So this is what we learned, what we will reap when we release mass murderers back to the streets. It's not a good thing. But Israel had to compromise whatever to bring those hostages, the most vulnerable ones, especially children. And by the way, Hamas thought that the children, the infants, were of a less value than the soldiers who were captured. And I'm very glad that the children and the most vulnerable ones, at least, big number of them, already back home. Because this was the weakest point Israel had in its fight against Hamas. And I think from this point on, everything changed. So I don't recommend the release of any terrorist, of any mass murderer, whatever it takes. And I hope that we'll find other ways to rescue the hostages in Gaza.
Well, in that issue, there's another question on Zoom from Dave. He's asking if you feel that the calling for Hamas leader's death might endanger the remaining hostages.
Look, I did not say to initiate execution today. I said a retrial based on each individual's case. Those who have blood on their hands should be considered dead. And if Hamas make any stupid move to hurt the hostages, the outcome of that would be execution of top Hamas leaders. This is how you put pressure on them. And who said that Hamas has any mercy? And who said that Hamas actually need a reason to commit their crime? They already did it. So this fear of what Hamas could retaliate is not the real answer. Now it's time to show determination, to show strength, to show justice.
There's another question, Mosab, from the Zoom. They're asking, how do you presume that we can go to peace? Any way that you think that we can go to peace with the Palestinians and maybe with Hamas?
Well, look, apparently I don't look like a peacemaker today, not with this attitude. And since it started the war, it has been like this. It's raging within, and I cannot hide it. The world's seeing it, and yes, this is now we are at war. And there will be a time for peace. As long as we haven't eradicated Hamas, we are still at war. Once we eradicate Hamas, remove them from power, then we can talk about rebuilding and restoring order, restoring the damage that happened. As of now, we have a job to do. And we have to get the job done. There's so many ideas of post-war, of how to proceed towards peace after. But now it's too early to talk about it because we don't know how much the price is going to be to eradicate Hamas. And the more they resist, the more they get cover from the world, the higher the price will go. And it could go to the no returning point. The more Israel has to pay in Gaza in order to eradicate Hamas, the farther we are going from peace. So with that said, let's focus on priorities right now. There will be a time for the peacemakers to talk about peace. At this moment, I'm not posing as a peacemaker. I cannot even predict anything post-war.
Okay, we have a few more questions. If you're able to answer, that would be good. We have a question from Debbie. She's asking if you think that Israel should go into Gaza and stay in Gaza.
Israel is already in Gaza. Israel is already on the ground, and it's a great progress. I don't think Israel has the interest of ruling Palestinians, but I'm sure Israel is determined to restore order. It's very important to destroy Hamas infrastructure, and it's a great progress in a short period of time that Israel was able to cut the strip into two parts and be there on the ground. I'm sure the intelligence service in the past week or two, they have more intelligence and they have a better strategy where to go from here. The next days, weeks will reveal Israel's true capacity of countering Hamas movement. They are the ones on the ground. I am not there. And I don't know where they have to compromise and how they are to have to shift their strategy. So this is up to the warriors on the ground and the generals who are in the decision making. But I give them my entire support, whatever it takes, to go after Hamas for as long as it will take until Hamas is eradicated. Then we can see, do we need to bring somebody from outside? Do we need to empower someone from within? Do we want to bring the Palestinian Authority or other figures or even Arab countries? I don't know. All this can be discussed, but the moment we remove the disease called Hamas.
So we have a question from Deborah. She is asking a question about the next generation of Gazans. She's asking and she's saying that the Hamas is educating these small children to go and be terrorists at a very young age. They have terror camps, as she's saying, and they're teaching them to kill Jews. So what will be the future of the next generation in your eyes?
But I don't know the future. I don't know the future. I never claimed that I do. So, but it's not a new thing that Hamas indoctrination is their first crime against children. We all know that. I went through the process. Instead of giving children good education, they teach them how to hate, how to blame from a very young age. Then they give them guns at a very young age. Then they make them believe that Israel, the United States, the West is conspiring against the Arab and the Muslim world. And we see now, we are all paying this, the price of such a lie, started by Hassan al-Banna and Sayyid Qutb in the past century, the Muslim Brotherhood ideology of a conspiracy theory from the West against the Muslim world. And that inspired Hamas, inspired not only the Gazan generation. We're not talking only about the Gazan children who are living the atrocities of war. We are talking also about many terrorists and many radical Muslims around the globe who believe that actually to dominate humanity and to dominate the globe as the only way. This is a sick belief, a sick indoctrination. And this will require the unity of every free person, artists, filmmakers, creative people, philosophers, writers, the entire body of humanity to counter such a disease. But again, this process can start now, but we cannot work creatively before we eradicate the immediate danger that we are dealing with. But to heal the wounds and heal a generation, we don't have a quick fix for this. We will have to deal with the consequences of war that savages started. Then it's a slow process. Now we are at the peak of hatred, and I hope that we will be able to contain it in Gaza. But my concern that we are dealing with a global problem. And if we fail in Gaza, we are going to fall many other places. So one step at a time.
Yeah, and we have a question from the Jerusalem Post. They're asking, why are there not more people like you, Mosab? And what is the percentage of Gazans do you think are not terrorists, followers of Hamas? Recent surveys make it look like almost everyone wants to be ruled by terrorists.
First of all, it's good that not many people like me. Otherwise, we would be in trouble. You see the attitude that I'm talking to, and you see my frustration, and you see the fire that I'm bringing into the situation. I don't want to see me. This is how ugly the reality we are dealing with. We want more people who believe in tolerance. I don't want them to go to the extremes where I'm at right now, where I have to yell at the world for the past 2 months almost, and nobody is listening. I would like to see more neutral people out there, people that they don't have to go to the extent of where I had to go, and that's possible. I want to see courageous people who are not afraid of the flow of a certain society. One of the biggest challenges I had in that society were suicide bombing attacks were agreeable, where the society praised killers and mass murderers. And I always struggled with that moral problem. And in order to go against it, I had to go against an entire society. And to go against such a current means self-destruction, meant that I had to drop everything in the process, all my comfort and all my security, and risk everything I had, my very existence, in order to stand truthful to who I am. Well, I hope that people don't have to take such extreme measures and be able to express their opinions freely. So why others are not following? I don't know. I don't know. People are afraid. People are afraid to die. And as long as we are afraid of death, we compromise. So I hope that in the future, just people will be able to express themselves freely, and we don't have to go to wars.
Well, we have two last questions. There's a question about what you just talked about, and it's from Lenny. He asks if you have any interest in saying the words that you just said, and why are you coming to being interviewed in this media center? Why are you actually going and saying all these words now, if you have any interest?
Well, because I have nothing to lose. This is what happens when you take everything from someone, accuse them of things that they did not commit, while the judge in this case is the criminal. You know, many years ago, my own family sentenced me to death. What's left? What do I have left that I would care? You know, if I go to any Palestinian place, you tell me if a majority of Palestinians, well, a majority of Palestinians agree that I should die. How am I supposed to feel about that? You know, well, how would you act if you were in my position? You know, when you are facing this type of injustice, all I did, I saved Palestinian lives. I never killed any one of them. I was seeking justice for myself. I was against violence. So was it fair to sentence me to death by my own father? You know, he thought he had authority over my head. By what authority? And this is practically what he did. Believe or not, after saving his life, how many times? If it wasn't for me, he would have been killed 100 times during the Second Palestinian Intifada. And what was the reward for saving the life of the savage? What was? It was that he disowned me. He told the whole world that my son's blood is allowed. Kill him. This is what he did. So same mentality of praising the ideology over the children. Like Golda Meir said, you know, when the Arabs love their children more than they hate us, there could be peace in the Middle East. Isn't this a living example, don't you think? That I was a child shunned by my own tribe for contradicting their delusion, their hatred. So, okay, if I am already sentenced to death today, what are you expecting from me? Are you expecting from me to advocate the Palestinian cause and the Arab cause? I've been waging hellfire. Israel fire is nothing in comparison to my fire. This is what the world needs to understand. You haven't seen me yet. That's the problem. I have a big problem with Hamas. I have a very big problem with savages. And they must be brought to justice. So why am I saying this? Go figure.
And this brings us to the last question before we conclude this amazing speaking with you, Mosab. There is an anonymous question, actually, of somebody anonymous who is asking how you lead your everyday life. They want to know if you're afraid, if you're leading a normal life today, and how you go on a daily basis. Are you under security, under surveillance? Do you fear?
Look, I live my life freely. It's a choice. And I'm not afraid of death. I have reconciled my problem with death long time ago. And I feel infinite. And I don't think physical death is the end. This is what most people in the Middle East are afraid of. The illusion of death, that is even an existent thing. So I have nothing to lose. I choose to be free, and I am not in hiding. I will confront whatever it takes. Today, it might look that it's risky and dangerous, and someone might die. But we will see tomorrow when Hamas is removed, and the world would look back and see the struggle that I had with those savages for so many years. They will understand that this is a just fight, and it's worth it, even if it's meant the physical death in the process.
Okay, thank you very much, Mosab Hassan Youssef.
Yeah.
You were an amazing, as usual, an amazing speaker, as usual. I really want to say thank you on behalf of the Media Center, on behalf of the National Public Diplomacy Directorate from the Prime Minister's Office. We will be happy to host you again. Many people asked a lot of questions we couldn't get to, and we had a lack of time, but for sure I will be able to forward them to you, and maybe you can answer them privately. Thank you for everybody for joining us today. You are welcome to join us again on a daily basis from 10 to 10 every day. We are in Tel Aviv on Kaplan 36th Street if you want to join physically, or if you want to join us on Zoom. We have special programs every day on a daily basis.